Welcome back. I'm going to go over this photo. It's got a more commercial feel to it, and I'm going to edit in a way that adds a little bit of green actually. Most of the time we're worried about the green going neon, so we'll talk about that. But also I am actually going to bring that up a little neon and work on that. Okay, so he's slayed his dragon and he's won his trophy. Okay. First things first, I am going to raise the exposure just a little. So let's just raise that a touch. We are going to work on that, so it's not really of too much interest right now. Contrast, raise that a little so that we can see some more detail there and have a little bit of a oomph to it. Now, I would like the temperature to be a little bit warmer, but not too much, so we'll just make that 5571. And the tint more green, I think. Now I'm actually going to make this too green and then I'll bring it back. We'll see how we go. So the highlights all the way down, the whites all the way down. We might just bring that back a little. Let's put that on 79 just so that we have some something to work with, so that we have some hair light, for example. And the shadows, okay, we might bring the shadows up and make that plus 25. Alright. And the blacks. Okay, we might put that on -5. And now we just might minus the saturation a touch. -5 on the saturation as well. Now I would like to darken this a little. I'm just going to bring that down through the center. But if we have a look at through here, I might actually use the numbers to play. And what I'd like to do is reduce the highlights a little, which we've done using the highlights and the whites, but just reduce it a little bit more. But overall add contrast. So I'm going to go for contrast. So if you need to add contrast, this is a great way of doing it. And so we'll put the lights on plus 28 and the darks, we won't really do too much, but I might just darken that a little, -3. And last but not least, the shadows. I might add a little bit more oomph and we'll go with -18 on that. Alright, now the hue saturation area, we do have a little bit of work to do here. Now normally I would actually desaturate the oranges, but I'm happy to leave him here at this point because I don't want him to get lost in that green there. So I would even consider saturating the oranges. It actually brings up the sword a little. So this is very unusual, so I'll just add +2 on the oranges there. Now the greens. Now obviously we've got a lot of green going on here. I might change the hue and make it a little bit more blue, which is what I'm after. And just desaturate it a little, just a touch. Let's go -2 on that. Not too much. Oop. And I'm going to desaturate using the luminance, which is what I've saved that desaturation for. So let's make that -51, which is a huge desaturation on the luminance there. Okay, and the blues, this area here, it actually is grey, so let's just desaturate the blues down there on wow, oh actually that's aqua, which is why it wasn't doing anything. Okay, so -22, and we might even bring the luminance down a little, -20. Okay, so the important aspect here now is the split toning. So I'm going to actually pick a blue out. And I want it to be a grey blue. And as you can see, it's already taken it fairly well across. And what I might do is just to make sure that it is actually going to stay there, is I will bring the hue over to blue as well. maybe not that much, so just leave it on 189. And the saturation, I do want to saturate that up, so plus 18. But the balance, so I think it's probably too much, so I'm going to make that yeah, let's just leave that on minus 38. Here I need a little bit of warmth in there now. We could actually even go bluer again, and you can see what that does. Or magenta. But if I really wanted to make this more of a neon green, which is what I'm going for, I'm going to add in some orange. Rather than going too neon, that's so neon because of the green, I'm going to differentiate the dragon underneath here, which is the green with the grass. So I'm actually going for more orange green, just so you can see that green coming out with the dragon underneath there. Okay, so we'll leave the hue and the saturation as they are. And now I'm going to go down to sharpening and just sharpen that up a little. And noise reduction, of course, because I've sharpened, I like to add noise reduction. Okay. Alright. So if this is too neon for you when you're said and done and you've got another image, because it would be for most images, remembering that if this had a lot of grass in it and if it didn't have a lot of depth of field, so there's actually a bit of depth of field here, the f-stop is 2.0. I don't think this kind of green would work because the blades of grass would be just too neon, but the blurriness makes it work for me anyway. So if you were finding that it was too much, you could desaturate the greens using the camera calibration here. And you could also make it bluer if you wish to. Now, if you remember, I decided not to make it too blue so that we could see the dragon coming out. But that would actually work. Now, I'm going to, on this occasion, pick out paint overlay as the highlight tone priority, and we could even go as the vignetting, I should say. And the reason I've done that is because it's actually taken the sky and made that grey as well. Reduce the midpoint down and the feather, of course. So now I've filled in the sky there. I'm going to actually give it a quick crop at the top, and I'm going to take that to a 5:7 ratio. And I'll just bring it down there. Okay. Alright, so now if you can have a look at the histogram, there's actually no blowouts in the image anymore, whereas this area was lost, but now it's grey, so there's no blowouts there. So if you click actually on this, it usually brings out the blowouts, and there are none. So that's good. Alright, so I'm ready to take that into Photoshop, and we'll work on it there. Before we do though, we've got this one. See the blowouts in this one? I've got the blowouts turned on, so we can turn that off now. Just click that and the blowouts come up. Better example, the other one really didn't show it, did it? Okay, so I'll go back to this, grab it and press sync. And I'll sync with the crop as well, I might as well. Alright. And there we have it. Alright, and I'm going to take this into Photoshop. Actually, before we go in, I just had a thought. We've got a lot of chromatic aberration just going on here. So I might actually see if we can get rid of that. I would hate to have to worry about that later. Let's tick the box and see if it does anything. It does not. So we're going to have to go in here and minus it using the green slider. So now if I have a look at the entire image, it's probably taken some of the greens out. Actually, do you know what? It's done. It's been fine. So now I can sync those and make sure that chromatic aberration is selected. Okay. Alright, so now we can take it into Photoshop. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and first things first, I would like to make it appear not quite so much. So the effect looks like I've done something to it, of course, which is fine. However, I'd like to just bring it back a little bit. So I'm going to go into selective color and pull down the greens and just play with those a little. Now I don't want to desaturate them, and I actually might illuminate them a little. Let's have a look there. Barely done anything. What I might do is just bring those across a little to make the greens a little bit more yellow. Okay. Now I need to do a curves, so I'm doing a curves adjustment. Now when you drag the bottom of the curves across, it adds contrast. However, when you go in the opposite direction, and that's what we're going to do here, and I'm just going to raise the curves a little and bring back a little bit of that contrast. Okay, so that's before and after that effect. And I'll reduce the opacity down just to about 63. Okay. So I'd actually like to mask that off his face, mostly because I don't like the contrast too much on his face there. So next thing is another adjustment mask. Actually, I might make a new layer, and we're going to add some downward light. So I'm going to bring the brush down to soft light, and I'll make it a nice big brush, and I'm going to change the color to white. And I'll just make that a big brush and stroke it through the middle to bring the downward light, because the light's coming from that direction. Actually, I'll make the brush a little bit bigger. Okay, and through the middle there. And if I change the blending mode to soft light there, it actually makes the light more realistic. And the opacity down to 50%. And as you can see, it actually looks more realistic, like as if it was a light there. And I'm just going to use an adjustment brush to brush that off on the subject there. I don't particularly want the light, and it doesn't hit him at the front there, it hits him at the back. And also on the side of the trophy and the boy there again. Okay. It has lit up the bed and his award though a little. Okay. So if you do this and you want to change the color, you can do it by simply going into curves and making it more yellow, which is what I've done here. And as you can see, it's actually made the sun much more yellow, but I did that a little too quickly, so let's do that again. So I went into image adjustment, curves. In the channel I pulled out blue, and then I dragged it down the right and actually made it more yellow, as you can see, but I won't do it again because I've already done that. Okay. So I'm going to do a new layer, and we're going to add in a little bit more light, and this time we'll pull down soft light again, make it a big brush on white, and I just want it to be lighter in that corner where the light would come down. Okay, and make that a mask, and I'm going to select out soft light again just to make it more realistic, and reduce the opacity of that down to about 42%. Okay. The only thing that I'm really concerned about at this time is his skin tones. All right. I wouldn't mind bringing some more detailing down the bottom. So I'm just now I'm going to darken the bottom. I don't think that the area is dark enough now that we've added light from the top. Of course, it should be darker down the bottom. So I'm going to do a gradient, and I'll pick green because the grass is green, obviously. And I'm going to move the angle over to the far right because that's where it would be darker. And press soft light in the blending modes, of course. So I'm going to drag that to the top. Okay, now I think that the green's a little bit incorrect, so I'm just going to make that more of an olive green. Just add in a little bit of yellow and make it a bit lighter. There we go. Okay, I much prefer that, except it's now on the bed. I'll reduce the opacity of that down to about 53, 52%. And now I'm going to just grab a big brush on a normal blending mode and mask that off on the bed there. Okay. So back to his skin tone. Alright, I much prefer that. Now I'm going to do another curves adjustment and make it red, and then grab down the blue and make the blue side yellow. And I need to work on the skin tone, so I'm going to press I to invert it. And I'll just grab a brush and make it quite small, and I'm going to paint in. Now be careful when you do something like this because it's fairly obvious. However, he was blue because of the work that I did in Photoshop, in Lightroom. But this is going to take a little while. So zoom in at 100% normally to make sure that you're getting it on correctly. You really want to make sure of that. Okay. Now I'm going to press X to swap the colours over back to black so that I can mask it back off here. Okay, X again on white. Now I'm going to reduce the opacity of that down to about 52, and as you can see, that's subtly made it so much better. His skin tones look more realistic now, a little bit more peachy on his hands as well as his face. Alright, so now the dragon. The colours are all interblended here, when really the scales are supposed to be yellow and the dragon's supposed to be green. So we're going to work on that. I've got a 19 feather on my lasso, and I'm simply going to lasso. Now, if I was concerned, I would get in there at 100% and do this. However, we'll just go and quickly do this, and I'll be able to mask it off anyway. The other thing is that that dragon actually isn't in focus, so it's okay to have it a little bit of overrun of colour, but I will work on that. So press shift to just add areas, and now I'm going to go into hue saturation, add a hue saturation mask, and just change the hue to more orange. As you can see, that's the green, and we'll go to the orange side, but not too orange. We just want that dragon to come out a little so you can tell it's there. Okay. So zooming in, you can see where the focus is here, and it's really not on the dragon at all. It's actually on the boy and his trophy. So now I can grab a brush and mask off the areas that I didn't want it. Now, looking at this, it would have been quite nice to have it less wide on this, but then I preferred the background have a wider aperture to blur it out, but I would like the dragon to be a little bit more in focus, hence the braids. Okay. So now that's sticking out more. So now I'm actually going to lasso this dragon, and in doing that I can actually see a scale at the end there that I missed, so I'll come back to that. But I've still got a 19 feather on my lasso, and I'm going to add areas in there. Actually minus that area off. I didn't want it on the blanket. Okay. And change the hue, so hue saturation mask again. And I'll make that more green. So now that actually comes out of the grass more, whereas before it was really kind of blending in there and you couldn't really notice it. Changing colours within photographs really helps just to bring out what we think is there and enhance it to make it a richer colour. Also, it helps to blend colours together so that they all match. Okay. So I'm just masking that off there. And going back and forth to the other one, the yellow one there. And switching my mask to mask on and off. Okay, nearly done. So I'm duplicating the background layer, Selecting all, Control Alt E to merge them all together, and now I've got a new layer at the top. And I'll just put all of these into a group. And here's a before and after. There we go. Now just looking at that, there is something else that I'd like to do. The trophy. The trophy's getting lost there. It needs to be a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to grab some adjustment masks. And I'll probably take about 3 to do this. And we might just actually use, I think we'll probably use color balance to do this. And I'm just going to add some yellow. I'll drag that to the top, of course, first. And some red as well, I think. Make it more gold. Could make it blue, but we'll go gold. Okay. And now I need to lighten it. So I'll do a curves adjustment and lighten that up. And a hue saturation and saturate that. So now I'm obviously overdone the photo. I'll grab it and put it all into a group. And make a mask and Control I to invert it. And all I need to do is paint that on. Again, if you're doing this at home, make sure you zoom it 100%. Get this brushed in properly. But I won't have you sit here and watch me do brushwork for hours and hours on end. You'll get the point. So I'm just brushing colour back in, and I often do this to enhance colour, and honestly it makes such a difference. Okay, nearly done. Okay. And I'll reduce the opacity to 71 on that. Alright. So, duplicate the background layer. Grab the layers, Control Alt E to blend it, to merge them again. Control J. Now, I often do this to check to see what Photoshop thinks, and I'm going to show you this if I haven't already. Oh, you might have seen me do this before. I'm going to do an auto color to see what Photoshop thinks it should be, and of course Photoshop thinks it needs to be redder and darker, but we made it this green on purpose, if you remember all those days back. No, I'm just kidding. 10 minutes back in Lightroom. Now, I liked the auto contrast. I didn't mind that. Auto tone as well, I don't mind. I think that's my favorite though. So now I think it's too much on his skin though. So I'll just make a mask of that. Or duplicate the layer, then make a mask. And I'm going to erase it off on this gorgeous boy and the area around him, just to make it less contrasty. Now the areas under the bed, I don't particularly need them to be black. Okay. And this is all really fiddly work. Like, we could have stopped actually in Lightroom. Really. Okay. And just masking off there. Reduce the opacity down to 64. So it doesn't really matter that it's a messy mask. And there's the before and after.